There have been many great teams throughout basketball's history, beginning with the Buffalo Germans in the game's first decade. Dr. Naismith called the Edmonton Grads the finest team that ever stepped on a floor. The UCLA Bruins and the Boston Celtics built dynasties that will probably never be matched. But there have been few teams that crystallized all the emotions, attitudes, and skills that create the magic of team, like the New York Knicks of the early 70s.
It was a very diverse group. First of all, it represented America's elite, from Bill Bradley to Ghetto Street, Earl Monroe or Dick Barnett, whichever one you wanted to take. Southern sharecropper's son from Willis Reed to a sophisticated urban kid like Dean Meminger. But what happened was those five diverse individuals from different backgrounds stood on the court and played tremendous basketball together because it was unselfish. It was a defense-first philosophy, but move the basketball and hit the open guy. And if the open guy got the shot, the ball went in the hoop. They were good shooters. Everybody could handle the ball pretty well. Everybody shared the ball very well. And I think from that standpoint, it appealed to people because they saw a group of individuals working well together that represented different types of people that represented our community, the United States.
The original 18 players ended their historic first game with an inauspicious 2-0 score. But that didn't stop word of the new game from spreading like wildfire. Within days, the Springfield Gymnasium was packed with curious onlookers eager to learn about Naismith's invention. The YMCA's far-flung empire did the rest. As training school graduates spread throughout the country, they took the new game with them. Thus it was that the YMCA League became part of the American landscape. Women were involved from the very beginning, though for the first 75 years, their game was designed to be less vigorous, in keeping with the period's patronizing attitude towards women's athletics. The horizons of the enthusiastic young missionaries from Springfield reached far beyond the borders of the United States, so along with their Bibles and Christian zeal, they brought Naismith's game to the world. From Egypt to Uruguay, Anchorage to Okinawa, within a few short years, basketball was everywhere. The game sold itself. Something in the nature of basketball makes traditional barriers irrelevant. Naismith's inspiration was on the road to uniting the world. In the United States, the fledgling sport wouldn't remain in its YMCA home for long. Its appeal was so immediate that it began to develop of its own accord. The colleges took it up first. And then by 1896, generations before Larry, Michael, and Magic, basketball was being played for pay. The early pro game was extremely rough, often played in cages to protect the fans from the players and the players from the fans. As basketball reached new heights in America, it was becoming increasingly popular in Europe as well. Its growth was energetic, but a bit confused, as each country adapted the rules as they saw fit. This made international competition difficult, and so in 1932, FIBA, the Federation of International Basketball Associations, was founded. FIBA was the brainchild of William Jones, a Welshman who had studied in Springfield and had vast international experience.
William Jones was a dictator, if you really want to get right down to it. He tried very hard to run democratic meetings. He tried very hard to be democratic in everything that he did. But when it all came down to the end, you either did it Dr. Jones's way or you didn't do it at all.
On a eu tout le monde, tous les basketteurs qui ont coopéré pour mettre sur pied cette manifestation.
R. William Jones was the right man at the right time to develop a sport.
The main goal for the FIBA was to introduce basketball on the Olympic program. And the FIBA was founded in 32, and in 36 already it was the first basketball tournament in Berlin and the Olympic Games.
The rising specter of Nazism had yet to cast its long shadow over Europe, so a large international representation participated in the Berlin Olympics of 1936. The worldwide popularity of basketball was highlighted by the fact that 23 teams took part. The United States, which was made up of 2 AAU teams playing alternate games, dominated the competition, though there were some surprises in store.
When we got there, we wanted to have a workout. Of course, we couldn't work out on the boat. We ran around and passed the ball a couple of times, lost a few overboard. But when we got there, we wanted to get on the get in the hall and play a couple of games to get between each other. And they said, well, there, you can play out there. And they pointed to a gravel court. 2 baskets were set at each end. A wall was around it, sort of a tennis court. And then the rules were kind of strange to us too, because we were allowed only 7 players on the court. That's what caused our Olympic committee to put Universal Pictures play the first game, and then the McPherson Globe Oilers play the second. And wouldn't it happen, the final game, it started to rain gently during the day. And it poured the second half, and each team could only score 2 more baskets each. The final score was 19-8.
After several hard-fought elimination rounds, the American team is meeting the Soviet basketballers in the final playoff.
The 1952 Olympics in Helsinki, Finland, saw the Cold War rivalry between the Soviet Union and the United States acted out on the basketball court for the first time. As a result of Russian stalling tactics in the gold medal game, the 30-second shot clock was introduced 4 years later.
Another free shot for the Soviet Union. But it's no good, and the tall Yanks...
American supremacy in Olympic competition would remain unchallenged for many years, but the rest of the world was watching and learning.
Another pass, a long looper.
For us, outside of United States, one of the players who made the big things for the basketball is Bill Russell, who played the Olympics in Melbourne. And that was just example how basketball could be played.
The talented young players who represented America on the world stage every 4 years not only extended the U.S.'s unbeaten Olympic record, but they established a standard of play for the rest of the world to aspire towards.
The Olympic team in 1960, it was composed by Jerry Lucas, Oscar Robertson, Jerry West. They became the best players in the NBA, and that was showing really to the rest of the world how basketball could be nice and how basketball could be well played.
In 1968, Yugoslavia broke the Soviet Union's stranglehold on second place. Though the United States won the gold medal again, they had actually gone into this Olympics as underdogs. To a large degree, this was due to the strange way the U.S. picked its team at the time.
The coach did not have a great deal of input in the selection, so that the committee would vote, and they would give you the players that they wanted. But you would have AAU players, you'd have Armed Forces players, you'd have some NCAA players, and you usually had an NAI. So you had 4 or 5 different factions. This caused a lot of political repercussions because some of the best college players would get left off. You know, John Havlicek wasn't good enough to make the team. Rick Barry wasn't good enough to make the team. Gail Goodrich wasn't good enough to make the team.
Despite these circumstances, the United States had a deep well of talent to draw upon. When America's best amateur player, Lou Alcindor, chose not to participate, Spencer Haywood, an unknown 19-year-old from Detroit, stepped into the breach. America's winning streak stood at 55 games, but for coach Hank Iba, the sweet taste of victory would turn sour just 4 years later.